take this again. At this point, you know, me and technology, we just be technologying along. So let's go ahead and get started with this Wednesday word. I encourage you, if you are watching this or if you're listening to this at another time, please, by all means, if this has touched you in any way, share it, like it, comments. I don't necessarily see the comments while I'm doing this, but I'll go back and watch them and see the comments at that particular time. But thank you so much for joining me for this Wednesday word. I won't keep you long. But this one today is on the godliness of independence. And what is that? That's like a whole lot of, meat and talking. But what really is that when I talk about the godliness of independence? Well, it actually came from a meme someone sent me, a friend of mine sent me. And when I went and I looked at the meme, it was on IG, and all these people were commenting and co-signing and, oh, this is great and this is good. And I was like, that ain't good. That ain't great. And the meme said, nobody hustles harder than a woman who doesn't like asking people for anything. And it's hard for me to ask people for stuff, but what I will do is ask for help, and I'll ask for things. And when I read this, and again, there were several women co-signing and was like, yes, I understand that. And I was like, no, that's so not of God. And I wrote on the post and I said, nobody is more stressed and stressed out needlessly on the path to hypertension, sickness, etc., than a woman who doesn't like asking people for anything. And so in our culture, this whole super independent mindset has been really perpetuated, and I think it's perpetuated a lot for women, Black women, but it goes even beyond that for women. It's not tied to a specific gender, but this whole independent thing, and that type of thinking is not of God. There is a level of godlessness in that type of thinking. So let's go ahead and go to the word when we look at that. And so I'm going to read two different scriptures actually. One from Luke chapter 6 verses 12 through 16, and then Mark chapter 6 verses 6 through 13. So I'm going to read them a little bit fast just because they're two different verses and they're kind of a little bit meaty, because I want to be able to get into just the message of what we're going to talk about today. And so again, the title of today's message is the godlessness of independence. And the first scripture that we're reading from is Luke chapter 6 verses 12 through 16. Now during those days, he went he, meaning Jesus, went out to the mountain to pray, and he spent the night in prayer to God. And when day came, he called his disciples, and he chose 12 of them, whom he also named apostles: Simon, who was named Peter, and his brother Andrew, and James, and John, and Philip, and Bartholomew, and Matthew, and Thomas, and James, son of Alphaeus, and Simon, who was called the Zealot, and Judas, the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who also became a traitor. That was Luke chapter 6, verse 12 through 16. And then let me go ahead and go to Mark chapter 6, verses 6 through 13. And he was amazed at their unbelief, he being Jesus. Then he went amongst the villages teaching. He called the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over the unclean spirits. He ordered them to take nothing for their journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts, but to wear sandals and to not put on 2 tunics. And he said to them, wherever you enter a house, stay there until you leave the place. And if any place will not welcome you, and if they refuse to hear you as you leave, shake off the dust that is on your feet as a testimony against them. So they went out and proclaimed all should repent. They cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick and cured them. That was Mark chapter 6, verse 6 through 13. And again, this whole thing of the title of today's message is the godlessness of independence, because it started from a meme that I read and I saw it on Instagram. Someone sent to me, no one hustles harder than a woman who doesn't like asking for anything. And that type of thinking is not of God. And why do I say it's not of God? Is because Jesus could do all things, but he still had help. God created us to be interdependent with him and upon him, but in community with others. And so let's even delve deeper and kind of get into this for just a second. So many people think that asking for help is a sign or reflection of weakness or their inability to do something. But in fact, asking for help is actually a sign of effectiveness. I had a friend post on Facebook in December. he posted something and it was effective over perfection. And I love that. And it resonated so much with me because I've been having this discussion amongst my friends about the issue that so many people get caught up in the chains of perfectionism. And it's not about being perfect, and it's not about the perfectionism mindset that we have. Is really more so about being effective. And so I want to just talk to you and bring to you to understand that the goal is not to be caught up in perfectionism. The goal is to be effective in your excellence. And so don't get caught up so much in that trap, because Jesus truly understood that. And when you look at his ministry, you will see that he walked that out. He embodied that, again, that interdependence upon God the Father, upon Abba, but also he called the 12 to him to be able to do certain tasks in ministries when it came to his earthly ministry. So again, there is a trap when you look at perfectionism, and you don't want to get caught into that, but you do want to understand that you can be effective in your excellence, and in excellence you can find effectiveness. There is a trap in perfectionism, and I see it so much within women that we get caught up in that. And again, this message is for both men and women, but I see it so much in women that we get caught up in that pressure and that stress of effects of perfectionism, and thinking that we have to do everything and we have to do it all the time, and that we don't need to ask anyone for help, or that we are so uncomfortable asking anyone for help, and it's setting us up for failure. And so recognize that Jesus did not even go alone in the work he was called to do. Like, he literally called 12 different men of various strengths as well as weaknesses, various characters as well as their character flaws, to be able to assist him in the earthly ministry that he was doing. And so even in this, Jesus recognized that, hey, I can call other people to be able to help me effectively do and serve the purpose that I am supposed to be doing as I'm walking here on earth. When Jesus was here on earth, he had an earthly ministry where he was healing, he was casting out demons, he was doing all of these things, which he was proclaiming who he was as the Son of God, but also as it was in preparation for the cross and salvation and all of those things. But we can't forget what the earthly ministry was and why he was here, that he had help doing it. And so with that, you need to ask yourself, if you're caught up in this trap of perfectionism, and if you're caught up in the godlessness of independence, is that how has independence crippled your effectiveness and hindered your purpose? And see, there are some crippling things that are going on within our community. And again, I'm speaking to everyone, but I'm really speaking to women with this, is that sometimes you're crippling yourself, you're crippling your purpose, you're crippling your effectiveness, because you are so caught up in perfectionism, you are so caught up in being independent, that you're not able to ask for help when you really need it. And so, I tell, in this past couple of weeks, I've told y'all, I've struggled with control, but what I ain't struggled with is this. I ask for help. If I need some assistance, I can pick up the phone. I know how to call a friend, a family member. You know how on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, they were like, well, you can call a friend or call someone. I know how to be able to do that, but not everyone is able to do that. I even have friends who I call on to help ask to assist me, and family members, but they struggle in that own lane to even come back and ask me for something. And so why is that? Why do we struggle with asking for help, for people to be able to help us? And so just look at that. If Jesus asked for help, or if Jesus, not necessarily asked for help, but he invited people into his earthly ministry to do the work that needed to be done, why can't we do that? And we need to understand and know the difference between what you could do and what you should do. Again, Jesus could do it all, but did he? Did he find that was a relevant use of his times? When we look at how Jesus fed the 5,000, Jesus could have did all of that when being there. He could have fed the 5,000, but instead he was the conduit for the miracle, and the disciples were the hands and feet of the miracle. They went out and distributed the food to the crowd as they were listening to Jesus as he was ministering, and as they were talking, as he was ministering and talking. They went out and picked up the baskets of food. Jesus was the conduit for the miracle. He broke the fish and the bread and passed it out to the disciples. But understand there's a difference between what you could do and what you should do. So again, we so caught up in this trap of what independence looks like and saying, hey, we could do this. And then the next thing is understanding that your way isn't the only way. I know we think that, hey, we can do this all by ourselves, that we can do this better than anyone. We can even sometimes do it quicker than anyone. But is that the right way that we are supposed to do it? The Great Commission, when Jesus literally, before his ascension, when he called the disciples and the apostles and all those were following him, and he gave the Great Commission, and he pretty much anointed them to go forth and do things, is a great example of understanding that your way isn't the only way. Christ set in motion through the Great Commission of empowering others to work out and to be able to spread the gospel in different ways. Jesus trained them. That was a part of his earthly ministry. And then he sent them forth. And then when you look at the book of Acts, it is a beautiful example of the ugly and also how it worked out well, of how different people can do different things. And that there was such a struggle between those who were Jewish and those in the Gentiles. And even we see this playing out in Acts because people thought that the gospel had to go forth in one way, or it was for one particular group of people. And that's not the case. And again, this is a great example of your way isn't the only way. So you don't have to be so independent, and you can recognize that that there is a blessing and a godliness of working in community with others. And so understanding that, yes, it may not necessarily be the way that you would have done it, but did the job get done? Was it effective? Again, it didn't have to be perfect, but was it effective? Because so many of us get caught up in this trap. And, you know, I've talked about this from the big level of purpose and walking out our faith and doing different things. But understand, asking for help and accepting help is not necessarily tied to these big, lofty goals or purpose. It's also tied to the small things. If you can't ask people for help with your work, getting your finances in order, or helping you in areas that you're overwhelmed in, recognize that is reflective of you having a struggle and an issue with control and an issue with trusting others and trust. Recognize the root cause of those things. It is tied to a lack of trust. You're having issues with trust and you're having issues with control. If those things are exhibiting so much for you that you can't ask people to help you, that you can't ask people to come in to assist you, again, on any area, because that is not the foundation nor the blueprint that Christ gave us. And I challenge you, if you find yourself in that space, that you need to recognize that, hey, this is something I need to be able to look at. Why do you feel that so many people are not going to come through for you when it comes to a trust issue? Or why do you feel that your way is the only way when it comes to a control issue? I challenge you to be able to look at those things. And then lastly, I just really want to just kind of get you to understand, freeing yourself from thinking like that means that you may think you are wearing a cape and that you're so independent, that you're soaring and that you're doing all of these things. But instead of a cape, you may really recognize that you are enchained to things that are keeping you from your purpose, your peace, wellness, and more. Because if you are so caught up in the need of being independent and I can do anything and I can do everything and I don't need nobody and all of these things, you are asking for disruption in your life, with disruptions in peace. You're asking for health issues. You're asking for so many things that you don't have to have. So there is a godlessness in independence, and we need to be able to talk about that. We need to be able to address it, and we need to be able to call it out and not co-sign foolishness that we see on the internet that says nobody hustles harder than a woman who doesn't like asking people for anything. I call that a lie. I'm a business owner. I do a lot of different things, because I've had to do things within myself, but I recognize that I have a capacity. I can burn out. And if I'm not able to ask others for help, then my business won't grow. Within ministry, leadership, if you're not able to train others, to entrust others with your vision, then it's going to become stagnant. It won't grow. In your household as a parent, if you can't trust someone within your household, be it your partner or someone else, to come aside you and help you you, then there's going to be stagnant. It's going to become stagnant and an issue and problematic in your household, where it's then going to be reflective between you and your health. I can go on and on and on and on with examples of how being overly independent will then become chains to you and your life on your journey. That is not of God. That is not of God. I rebuke that. I reject that. And so again, the next time you feel or you feel this need to be overly independent and think that I don't have to ask anyone for help, I want you to stop and ask yourself why. What is the root of those things? So again, thank you so much for this Wednesday word. I hope you enjoy it. For those who are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, actually, let me back that up, because pretty much large parts of the country. So those are those who are homebound with ice and weather and snow, and even those who are gone out and because you have to go and work and get in this type of weather. I wish you safety if you're leaving, and even if you're at home, I wish that you have food. I wish that you have the basic necessities like heat. I wish you all of those things. Thank you so much for joining me for this Wednesday word. I hope you're well. Bye-bye. See you next week. I can't remember what the topic is next week, but y'all will find out next week. Same time, same place. Bye-bye.